in the increasingly autonomous northwestern part of Fyrom, and increase benefits to the veterans of the 2000-2001 Albanian guerrilla insurgency against the government. The situation has not noticeably improved over the past 2 years. Indeed, there was an especially alarming incident in early May of this year. 4 individuals were killed in a shootout with Fyrom police near the northwest border hamlet of Radusha. They were driving a van transporting illegal arms from Kosovo. Now, unless we assume that the Fyrom police are exceptionally competent at their interdiction efforts, it is highly probable that there have been other shipments and that this is part of an ongoing campaign to foment a new insurgency. A little detail that NATO leaders might want to consider. If Fyrom ever becomes a member of NATO, that nasty ethnic separatist problem becomes a matter of direct rather than indirect concern to the alliance. One would think that the United States in particular has enough foreign policy headaches around the world already without adding that one to the list. Now, fortunately, it is doubtful whether Fyrom will gain membership in NATO anytime soon. Its ongoing quarrel with Greece remains a major impediment. The primary reason that Fyrom was not invited to join NATO when Albania and Croatia were was because Athens continued to object to that country using the name Macedonia, which Greeks rightly insist belongs only to the region of their country. But that controversy is not just over a historical and linguistic point, which seems to be the attitude of the U.S. State Department. I've had a conversation with a mid-level State Department official during the Bush years who described this as a silly dispute, a trivial dispute. And I think that is the dominant attitude within the State Department, within the U.S. foreign policy community. Greeks worry, understandably, that the Fyrom government's insistence on calling its country Macedonia implies a territorial claim to Greek Macedonia. And indeed, maps circulating routinely in Fyrom include major chunks of Greek territory as part of a, quote, greater Macedonia, unquote. And that fact does nothing to allay fears in Greece. And in early 2008, Fyrom's prime minister was photographed laying a wreath at a monument that featured a map of Greater Macedonia, which even included Greece's second largest city. Now, such provocative territorial claims are hardly consistent with the view of Fyrom that the U.S. State Department has tried to promote. The nature of Washington's continuing lobbying campaign for NATO membership for Fyrom can be seen in the gushing article about the country in the April 2010 issue of State Magazine, the official publication of the U.S. State Department. The cover on that issue described Fyrom as, quote, the pearl of the Balkans, unquote. And the title of the article itself was Ancient Macedonia Builds Modern Democracy. That is how it described Fyrom. The American Hellenic Institute issued a scathing 5-page letter rebuking the State Department for publishing such a puff piece, and the letter effectively debunked several of the article's claims. And the State Department backpedaled a bit and said, well, our official policy on this issue has not changed in the slightest, and we're very sad that people misconstrued the article in the magazine. NATO expansion into the Balkans is a spectacularly bad idea, for it entangles the alliance in an assortment of murky disputes and potential dangers. Most of those issues are of marginal relevance even to NATO's other European members, much less to the United States. The alliance has not been strengthened by the process of enlargement. To the contrary, it has acquired new strategic liabilities rather than assets. The new Balkan members are militarily irrelevant, and they all bring with them a variety of unpleasant problems. Enlargement has been an especially bad deal for the United States. As NATO's leader, America is responsible for implementing the alliance's goal of maintaining stability throughout its membership zone in Europe and indeed in other portions of the world. Given the history and current condition of the Balkans, U.S. policymakers have now made all the quarrels and problems of that volatile region America's problems. And that is an extremely unwise strategy. Thank you very much, and I'll take your questions and
Thank you very much, Dr. Carpenter. I want to ask questions now.
Dr. Carpenter, if the U.S. knows all this baggage that all these countries...
Sorry.
If the U.S. government knows all this baggage that these countries are carrying around, why are they insisting on inviting them?
The attitude seems to be that NATO enlargement, wherever it occurs, is a good thing, that it is a stabilizing factor. This was a strategy adopted during the initial decade of the post-Cold War era, designed initially for Central Europe and then gradually further east, including the Baltic region, and then gradually elsewhere in Central and Eastern Europe. And the assumption is that NATO membership, and ultimately European Union membership as well, will encourage good behavior by all of these countries, will dampen disputes between countries, and therefore bring peace, stability, and harmony throughout all of Europe. That is the ultimate goal. To me, I think there is a huge difference between bringing a country like Poland or the Czech Republic into the alliance, although I've had some misgivings even about that, and bringing countries that have bad relations with neighboring states. We see that problem in a particularly acute way in the Balkans, but you've had U.S. officials, politicians, members of the foreign policy community wanting to bring countries like Ukraine and the Republic of Georgia into the alliance as well. And to me, when you're starting to bring countries into the alliance that are governed by rather unpredictable people, as in the case of the Republic of Georgia, that have bad relations with large neighboring states like the Baltic republics and the Republic of Georgia, and under the previous government at least, Ukraine, you're buying a lot of trouble. I think you're assuming that NATO has a stabilizing capacity that is much greater than it actually has. And the alliance, I think, is in for a series of extremely nasty surprises if it continues on this path. Yes, over in the second row.
If you were an advisor to the Greek Prime Minister, how would you advise him to proceed in terms of policy vis-a-vis the fire?
I'm not sure that I would advise the Prime Minister to do anything differently than what the Greek government has done all along. Stress the aggressive territorial claims that are routine within FYROM, that the FYROM government has done little or nothing to discourage these claims, and stress again and again, look, this is not just a historical or linguistic point. It is that, but it's a lot more, and that this represents a rather insidious threat to the territorial integrity of Greece.